In this training, I'm going to be talking about getting federal buyers to open emails, right? And when I was doing the preparation for this training, it reminded me of when I was selling vacuum cleaners way back when, like the 80s, late 80s. So I've been doing this a long time. But I used to sell vacuum cleaners door to door in California, and this training reminds me of it. I would lug up this vacuum cleaner and my briefcase, which had all the paperwork, right? I'd lug this up to the door of somebody's house and I would knock on the door. And then I stood back from the door and put on just this casual smile, like it's a non-threatening smile, I hope. And my stance was encouraged, it was done in a way that would encourage them to open the door. Like they're looking out the little peephole in the door. I just took several steps, like 3, 4, 5 steps back. You kind of down one stair or two. So you're not right in front. You're not threatening. And if you think about an email, the subject line is kind of the same thing. The subject line's job is to get the door open. And for me, my stance and my casual smile and me holding some stuff, I look not threatening. And it makes them want to open the door and go, what do you want? And that was how things were done back then. And when they'd open the door, I'd say, hey, hi, I'm Neil McDonnell with Electrolux Vacuum Cleaners. They really suck. Right? And I'm holding the vacuum cleaner and I say, they really suck. And it would just cut the ice for a second and they'd smile. And then I would go for the ask, right? I'd say, if you have a minute, I'd like to give you a quick demo. And I'd take the cord and I'd hand them the cord. It has the plug on the end. I'd hand them the cord. And this is something I learned on my own back then, is that if you hand somebody something, they will do the right thing with it. So if you hand them a screwdriver, they're going to look for a screw. If you hand them a hammer, they're looking for a nail, a pen, they're looking for paper. And when you hand somebody a plug, they go look for an outlet back inside their house, right? So that's just the way vacuum cleaners were sold back then. And your email body needs to do something similar. And that's what we're going to be talking about today, right? It needs to encourage the buyer to do what you want. And you don't want them to do a lot of things. For me, when I handed them the cord, and they went back in and plugged it in, that brought me in, right? I was able to come in and show you my vacuum cleaner. Look, it sucks up the dirt. It's great. And that's, again, just how things were. In today's training, I want to teach you how to get buyers to open the door and to invite you in, right? That's the whole point of today's training. Let me go ahead and share these slides. So in today's training, I'm going to cover down on 5 main things. I got a lot to share, so I'll go pretty fast. But the first thing I'm going to cover is just the rules of outreach. It's really important for us to remember that there's a right way and a wrong way to reach out. I'm going to talk to you about the right way. And then the second thing I want to talk about is when you send emails, and we're thinking about like, what's the best way to send an email? Before you even get to that stage, I want you to think about, what does a buyer think when they get your emails? And then I teach this thing in sales, and I'll talk to you about it from a couple different angles. But basically, some will, some won't. So what means that sales and emailing to new buyers, new people, that's sales, right? And some of those people are going to open your email. Some of them won't, or some of them will respond. Some of them won't. So we'll talk about that. Then I'm going to dive into examples of some perfect email frameworks. And it's really dangerous to put the word perfect in there, but I put perfect because they work, right? They open doors for me. So I want to give you real examples of emails that we send that get out, that I send, that get open. And then the last thing I want to talk about is what to do if they don't respond, right? So it's not enough to have a perfect email and it's going to get open. There's people who are not going to. Remember, some will, some won't. What do you do with the ones who don't? I sent you a perfect email. Just because you didn't open it doesn't mean I'm not going to keep coming back. And so that last thing I'm going to cover down is, what do you do when they don't respond? If you don't know who I am, my name is Neil McDonnell. I'm the president of the GovCon Chamber of Commerce. I want to welcome you to my federal sales training, where I provide tips for success in the federal market. I spent 20 years as a small business owner in the federal market. And since 2018, I've been teaching people like you that government contracting is not a secret. It's just a process. When we follow a process A to Z, we're going to have repeatable, predictable results. And that's what I want for you to run emails, right? When you follow a good process for email outreach, you're going to have repeatable, predictable meetings. If you haven't done so already, subscribe to my newsletter on LinkedIn here. It's Government Contracting Success Newsletter. We have a lot of good information that we put out. In fact, I'll tell you later on in today's training that if you want some handouts, I'm going to mention the way I'm going to get them to people. The easiest way for me is I'm just going to write an article in the newsletter and say, here's the handout. So make sure you subscribe to the newsletter and join 12,000 other people who subscribe. It's a really good community. The other thing is, I wanted to say thank you. Over 100 people, I think over 120 people have registered for today's training. I really, really appreciate you doing that. When you do that, you are giving us a thank you that we very much appreciate. You let us know you're coming. It makes us enthusiastic about coming in and doing this volunteer training, right? So it's exciting for us when you register for training. So please keep that in mind. We got one more training this week. It's tomorrow and on the 26th of January for those of you coming live. And it's going to be about how do you get on a contract vehicle that already exists. And then I'll have all sorts of training next week. Make sure you register for that when you see it. The last thing is make sure you invite a friend. We have a community here. It's a network. And literally, it's a bigger community for you than it is for me, because while I'm training, I don't see the community, but you have this ability to chat and talk with people and say, hey, let's take it offline and go build a relationship, right? So go ahead and do that. Let's get started by talking about the rules of outreach. So there's a common theme here I think you can see. So the first rule of outreach is don't spam. The second rule of outreach, said a little differently, is don't spam. Right? And if I go into a third rule that's similar but not quite the same, spam, just don't. Spam bad. I don't know how many times I can say this, but I am what I am, but I will not spam. This is vital for us. If you want email success, send emails one at a time. We do not spam, and spamming is an easy thing to understand. If you're spewing out a bunch of emails, you're spamming. Even if you sit there and think you're kind of getting fancy with it, it's still spamming, right? Not spamming is when you actually take the time to go, I want to send this person an email for this reason. Not just I want to send out 100 or 1,000 emails and see who responds. So do me a favor. If you get this and you're with me that you're not going to be one of the people who spam, put spam bad in the chat. And then I'll tell you how to properly send out emails so that you can get people to respond to you and start taking meetings. But put in the chat, spam bad. So that way everybody comes and watches the replay later. They see a bunch of these spam bad, and it reinforces the message. Let's talk about what buyers think when they get your email. A lot of times we send emails and we think certain things, but it's really interesting is that we forget what we think when we get all these emails in our inbox. And when we look at our buyers or the people we want to reach out to and set up meetings, when we look at them, we put a whole different expectation on them than we put on ourselves when we get emails. And so I want to kind of help you realize that they're just like you, right? And one of the biggest challenges we have is when we're doing this outreach, and this is what this is when you're sending emails and you're trying to schedule meetings, you do this outreach and you're sending emails out, you're making phone calls, whatever, and you're hearing crickets. So literally you're hearing nothing, which is an interesting problem to have. And I want to be able to help you get past that stage. I'd rather you get a no than to hear crickets, right? A no is a good thing to have because yeses and nos are the same part of a gold mine. The yeses are gold, the no is dirt, but you need them both inside of a gold mine. And in sales, we need yeses and nos. That's just normal part of activity. So one of the things that buyers might think when they get your email is nothing. They don't think anything. They don't think anything at all because they don't even see your email. An email comes in from you and it goes straight to their inbox. And you're over in your office going, wow, what are they doing? Did they look at it and ignore it? I can see they opened it or whatever, right? It's like they might not have done anything. It just went straight into their inbox and they're oblivious to it. By the way, this is a very big problem with me is that I get so much content coming in that sometimes I don't see things. And the people who really want to connect with me, they need to follow back up because if I didn't say no, the answer is, I don't know, let's still talk. And buyers are the same thing. Another reason the buyer might think nothing at all is that the IT department saw emails coming in and they just blocked it. Maybe you're coming in from a domain or an IP address or whatever, or an IP address that is blocked. And the IT department goes, oh, let's just block all these. And so they're just blocking your emails from even getting into the federal buyer. Maybe your domain is not secure enough. You need to track this stuff down. You need to follow up with the customer in some way and go, are you getting my emails? I'm just checking. Have you seen the emails I'm sending? And then the last one is much more common for all of us is that, and what I just described for me, an email comes in and I'm not thinking anything about it. The buyer is not thinking anything about your email because that email got buried under other emails, right? You sent it at 10 o'clock when they were in a meeting and then they had another meeting, then they had lunch, and then they came back and looked at their inbox and there was like 30 emails in there and yours had come in at 10 and then 29 others had come in after yours and it pushed it down. Oh my God, I'll get to those emails a little later. And then 29 more emails come in, right? And so it just gets buried. That's normal. I like to say if they didn't get back to you within 24 hours, they're not going to. Like, it's getting buried. There might be some people who don't get a lot of emails and phone calls, et cetera, but for the most part, we all do. And the further it goes away from the time you sent it, the more chance that they just missed it. It's not that they're choosing not to get back to you. This goes back into, and I'll probably talk about this later, but I'll talk about this at the end, about how frequently should you follow up. But most importantly, you should just remember that you need to follow up, because a lot of times they didn't even really think anything about your email because they didn't see it. The second thing that they think, second major thing they think is, who is this? They get an email and they're like, well, who's this Neil McDonnell guy? And that's what's going through their head, right? So one of the things you want to be doing out there is be visible. Social selling is about making sure you're engaging in social media in a way that your buyers might be able to see you. People will begin to be aware of your company, et cetera. But keep in mind, they're going to say, who is this? And we'll talk about this in a second, right? Is that the next thing at the very bottom they'll do when they say, well, who is this? Is they'll go out and look and go, well, let me go look at who this person is. So I got the email. I'm like, who is that? Let me go check. And then I go on to DSBS or I go on LinkedIn, and a couple things happen. One is I might just get distracted and not get back to the email. So I didn't say no. I just was doing some research, and then I went somewhere else, and boom, I forgot about you. No offense, right? Another thing could be they look at LinkedIn and they go, it's not a match. Or they look at DSBS and go, well, I don't understand why I would be talking to this company, type thing, right? And so when people get an email from you, they're going to sit there and ask, who is this? And then the other thing they might say, think when they get your email is, let me look at that later. And whenever anybody says, let me look at this later, that means that that email is going farther and farther down in the inbox. And it's your responsibility to just come back and keep refreshing their memory that you want to meet with them. You'd like to talk with them. The answer is always maybe if it's not no, right? It's never, ever say no for the customer. Don't go, oh, I sent them 3 emails. The answer is no. Nuh-uh. The answer could be junk mail, and you got to try something different. All right. So before I go into the email framework, I just wanted to remind you of what success looks like and what compared to the effort that you put in. So I like to say some will, some won't, so what? In sales, what this means is, let's say emails, some will respond to your email, some won't respond to your email, so what? Don't get caught up on the ones who aren't responding. First off, make sure you're focused on your energy on the ones who do. Show them the love, they got back to you. And then the second one is when they don't respond to you, forget about if they said no. No is a great answer. But if they don't respond to you, just treat that as if you're just going back. You just got to keep following up. And so I wanted to use this bell curve as a way to show you how many people out of 100 will even respond to your email. If you send 100 emails, and this is adding up to 100%, this bell curve talks about who will respond, right? So innovators, 2.5 people, right? I don't know, we got a half, but 2.5 people will instantly respond. They're very good on their emails. They're like very good getting back saying, let me respond to anybody who ever wants a meeting. And then you got early adopters, 13.5%. And this is the next group who maybe like me occasionally keeps trying to come back and clean up their email and, oh, did I miss anybody? But this is 13.5% of the people. So 16% of the people will get back to you. The next group is called the early majority. These type of people probably won't get back to you until they've seen several emails or reached out from you, until somebody in the innovator and early adopter group had said, hey, I was talking to Joe. You should talk with Joe. It's like, oh, okay, I saw his email the other day, right? And so you got this early adoption or early majority group, but that group is much farther down the line. And so if you think about how many times you might have to reach out to them before they get back, it could be 5 or 10 times. And then half the people, late majority laggards, those people will not get back to you. Half the people will not get back to you. You have to accept that. That means if you reach out to 100 people, 16 people will get back to you, and the 84 will not. 84 people will not get back to you out of 100 people you reach out to. Now, if you reach out to them again and again kind of thing, then you increase that number. But don't ever look for 50% or 100% of people to get back to you. That's just not how sales works. It's not how activity works. So as long as you're increasing your activity, you're going to get the traction you want. So I'm just tracking on my time here. I'll move pretty fast. I got several slides, but here I want to just lay out the idea of a perfect email framework is to remember what the purpose of an email is. I teach this in sale or marketing assets. When you have a marketing asset, each marketing asset has a purpose, like the capability statement's purpose is to get a meeting, not inform. Well, an email, its purpose is to get a meeting. We're talking about when you reach out for the first time, not when you're having dialogue with somebody you've already met with, right? So the very first time you try to reach out to somebody, the whole purpose of the email is to get a meeting. What it is not for is to inform. I often see people struggle with getting any kind of responses. I say, send me your email. And when I look, it's this long thing. And they're like, well, I wanted to tell them everything about what we're doing. We're doing a lot of good stuff and we have the capability to do this, but we could even do this if they need it. I'm like, it's as if you walked up and you were meeting somebody at a bar and date situation. And before you even let them talk, you said, hi, I'm Neil. Here's the entire story of my past life and where I'm thinking about going, right? I never stopped to see if that other person even wanted to talk, let alone got to know them a little bit. And so when you send an email, think of it this way, that its job is to get a meeting. Anything more that's in an email that is not driving to the meeting is a distraction from you getting what you want from the email. In order to have a good email, it just needs to be clear and concise. And what I mean by this is think social media. When you look at a social media post, you want it to be kind of short sentences, little bursts. Any of us who learn to write on social media, we don't write these big paragraphs. We kind of write it in small lines, right? One sentence kind of thing. We do it in lists and bullets or something. We're trying to get your eyes to pop, 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 pop down, similar to the bullets on this slide, right? Your email should look like slides from now on. It should be really concise to the message. I like to say that your email should be a 2-second email, meaning in 2 seconds or less, you should be able to get a yes or no or not me from the person who reads it. So they'll look at it and go, oh yeah, I'll have the meeting. Or no, Neil, I'm not meeting with you. Or, which are totally cool. Yeah, you need them all. Or you want them to look at it and go, well, that's not me, but I know Sally does that. Let me forward it. Hey, Sally, Neil's trying to reach out to me, but I think you're better. Or I respond to you and say, hey, I know you're trying to meet with me, but really you want to meet with my colleague, Sally, right? So in 2 seconds or less, a clear, concise email will get a yes, no, or not me. I just put in a framework. Really, there's only 3 pieces of an email, right? There's a subject line, there's a body, and then I put in separately from the body is there's a signature line. And so the purpose of a subject line, right, is to get the email open. It's not to do anything else. So the whole point of a subject line is similar to like clickbait. If you think about this, if you're going through YouTube or you're going through Facebook or LinkedIn, something catches your eye and you go, let me stop for a second and look at that. Social media is really what email is like as well, because I have 100 emails in my inbox and I'm scrolling through going, let me just see if there's any that are important. You're trying to stop somebody as they're going through all their emails. So they stop, they look at that subject line, and the subject line encourages them to click on it and open the email to learn more inside there. So everything has a purpose. Always know things' purposes. So the subject line purpose, get the email open. And when the email is open, the body is in there. Its whole job is to get a response, right? Collectively, the purpose of the email is to get a meeting, but the body's purpose is to get them to say, well, let me reply, right? Let me reply to them and say yes, no, or not me. And then the signature line, what I say there is the purpose is to tease value. And I'll show you in a minute what I mean, but you could put a couple of statements in there that encourage them to go, it looks interesting. Like it just adds a little bit more. This is a way to avoid putting it in the body, but putting a couple of little teasers. And I'll show you what I mean. One thing I do want to say as I go into the example emails that I have is that don't look at them as the only way. Don't pick them up and go, let me use them over and over again. Use them as a guide more than a template for what you're doing. That's why I call them the email framework, not template, is I'm trying to show you what they could look like. It's your job to tweak it for each person you're talking to. That literally is the definition of spam, is to make each email unique. It doesn't have to be overly unique, right? You can have a solid framework to follow, but each person you'll have it kind of different. So keep this in mind. I don't want you picking up what you're going to see on the screen and then using it over and over again the exact same way I did, because you'll decrease the chances of success. Okay, so I wanted to start with signature line because it's the easiest thing and I'll come down to it. This is what I mean by just a basic signature line. It just has some basic information. When I say it teases value, what I mean is my My company tags, better known small business and 8A. That's not really me, but I put that in there. I just sneak it into the bottom, right? I never put it in the body, but I sneak that in there. Maybe it teases a little value. And then data analytics and business intelligence. The only meetings I want are with people who care about data analytics and business intelligence. I want somebody to say no as fast as they can when they go, we're construction. I don't need to meet with you. I don't know who this guy is. No, right? And they either say no, actually, or they don't respond. But either way, they've made that decision. This is what I mean by teasing with value. My recommendation to you is not to use links, pictures, etc., any of this stuff. In particular, when you're reaching out to the government, so much of the government is hyper aware on cybersecurity risk and making sure that everything is safe. If you make your signature line all basic text, it strips away any concern about there being a problem with that, right? So having a link to LinkedIn, sometimes I do that as well, right? Off to other places, the system starts stripping it and makes it look ugly. And every agency is different. Every agency, even inside of certain agencies, depending on who's managing their IT, they have different sets of rules. And so it's better to just go strictly text. The other thing is get rid of pictures. Pictures are unpredictable. And you don't want to put anything in your email that's going to be unpredictable or cause them to think outside of where you want them to think. You want them to think about the subject line and the body. And so if you put a picture at the bottom, they start consuming the picture. They start looking at it. It's like, oh, what's that or whatever. It's like, get rid of it all. It's not a thing that you want in there, right? And so the other thing I put here in the red box is I don't even use my signature line sometimes. When I don't use my signature line, I see a lot of people do this. It really kind of drives me, a little pet peeve of mine. When I see people send emails and their signature line's always in there and their signature line says very respectfully. I've literally had arguments with somebody where in it says very respectfully. I'm like, wait a minute, that's not very respectfully. Don't use a signature line that's so automatic, right? Sometimes you don't need a signature line. Don't put it, I don't put it in replies. Otherwise it creates this crazy, ugly email. Think about the experience for your customer, but sometimes you just don't need it. Regards, Neil, makes it seem like, hey, we're friends. You don't need a signature line. You know who I am. Even if they don't, right? I just look that way. All right, so here's some examples of subject line. I'm going to pick up speed. I try to do 3 government people, right? So small business professionals, contracting specialists, and program office. So an example of a subject line that I put in here is industry day question. Small business professionals interact with industry and on industry days, et cetera. Another one is intro call next Tuesday. And it's like, do we have an intro call next Tuesday? Are we talking about it? Like, I'm trying to pull them in, right? And I'm not here, by the way, to debate any of my examples. I'm trying to give you examples so that you can create your own examples. Contracting office and specialists, right? Here, I might use like an opportunity ID I just made one up. And then here I put a clarification question. And what I'm trying to do is to figure out how can I get them in. Sometimes contracting shops people might be looking through a lot of emails. If I can kind of stop them on their opportunity, I know they're responsible for that. That number kind of captures them. The other one I used here as an example is FDA acquisition roadmap. For me, that's about trying to get an intro meeting and talking to them. And so say I'm reaching out to somebody at FDA and I'm saying acquisition roadmap. And actually I put it in capital letters. I might even put it in lowercase. Like sometimes putting it in lowercase makes it a little softer reaching out. And then a program office. Program office is different from those other two. So here, there's an office in the Air Force called, I forgot what it's called, but RSO, right? That's this this program office's name, RSO. And I'm saying quarterly report question. I'm just putting a quick thing in. Same thing with intro call on AIML and fleet maintenance. And the reason I'm doing this is because the office I'm trying to reach out to is responsible for AIML, as it has to do with the Air Force's airplanes and fleet maintenance. And so I'm trying to make it just a casual way of reaching in. Now, when I go into the emails, I'm going to try to drive to that point. The idea of clickbait is not a bad thing. What's bad is like a bait and switch, where you bait with something and give them the totally different thing. But if you clickbait on here's a fast car, and when you go into the email, here's all this detail about the fast car, then that's fine. That's exactly what I wanted because I saw something about a fast car. Same thing here. When I say intro call to AIML in the fleet maintenance, then I'm going to drive into those. I realize my time's really short. I only got 3 minutes. I'm going to go through this pretty fast. But here, as I look at small business professional, right? FDA strategic plan question. What I want to show you here is how short this email is. You can come back take a screenshot. But I'm saying I recently did my homework. I'm trying to endear myself. On your strategic plan, I had a couple of quick questions. Do you have time to talk? And then I give them a choice. And you can watch my whole other training where I really talk about setting up meetings. Let me show you the next one as the contract shop, right? Here I'm saying emerging technologies and FDA, and I'm trying to like tease an interest, and they're either going to click on it or not. But here I'm saying we've been supporting HHS for a while. Would you have 15 to 30 minutes next week, the next week or two for an introduction call? So I'm trying to, no pressure, just trying to set it out. And I'm always at the bottom suggesting a time. I'm trying to get them to choose a time. This last one is the program office. So here I'm saying I just finished, right here, APMO's strategic goals, right? And I'm hoping that's enough for them to go, what's that? Let me look at it. I just finished reading your quarterly report. I was hoping to ask you a couple of questions. Could you make time? I'm asking them, could they make time for an intro call? It's kind of the sales thing where, of course I can make time. It's like, why would you think I can't make time? And it almost pulls them into saying yes, right? And again, I'm saying, hey, I got time for a meeting. And here I threw in for a virtual meeting. I'm trying to say no pressure. We jump on a call and it'll be fine. Really quickly, what I say about if people aren't responding, and I might go a minute over here, but just call them back, follow up. I'm going to put out in a newsletter tomorrow, so make sure you're subscribed, but I'll put out how to follow up over 30 days, what to do every single day as a follow-up if people don't respond in order to start getting them to respond. Here's what I want you to do, though, from today's training. First off, watch the replay. If I went way too fast, you can still look at the slides because they're good. But pick 10 people to reach out to, and then do a little bit of research on them, and then reach out. Test this process with 10 people over the course of 30 different touches, 30 different ways of following up, and see how many of the 10 you can get into. If you're concise and clear with your emails, the number of people who respond back to you should increase. Part of a process is stopping on time. I'm going to stop at 12:30 so you can go to your other meetings. But just remember, government contracting, it is not a secret. It's just a process.